By the end of the 1970s, hip-hop started to establish its foot in the door of the music industry. It was no longer this freestyle performance that was done in a club or at a block party or even in a park. It became a more standardized form where the DJ would cut back and forth with a beat and sort of make the beat almost loop, and the MCs, or actually the rappers at that point, would rap their phrases, their lines out during that performance. And this happened all over New York City. It was no longer confined to the Bronx. It was spreading everywhere. And recording studios and recording engineers were taking notes, trying to figure out how they can help these rappers have new careers in the music business. Now, as these crews start to record, like the Cold Crush Brothers and the Funky 4+1, also the Treacherous 3, they're actually formatting a new way to recreate rap songs. And by 1979, Rapper's Delight is a big hit, performed by the Sugar Hill Gang, Sugar Hill Records. But the biggest contribution to the hip-hop industry and to the entire planet, actually, was the establishment of Grandmaster Flash's technique of looping records. From one to the next record, his technique was so popular, he did instructional videos, instructions in every country he visited, and DJs all over the world started doing the same thing. It wasn't just being done in hip-hop or R&B joints, it was done in clubs everywhere around the world. And wherever rap music went, it kept changing. When it got to DC, it changed. When it was in Texas, it changed. In Miami, it changed. And it changed in California. But a bigger change was coming. Technology was about to take over the music industry with brand new devices like digital recording and drum machines. Hip-hop was about to be available for the home producer. Hey, if you like this series, please join us at SampleKings.com right here on YouTube. We have 6 episodes on the technology used in the hip-hop over the last 50 years. Now, I'm Doc. I also do instructional videos here on every software and every device. So check us out, but please subscribe. By this point in 1980, most of the music played and used by hip-hop artists is created by bands. A producer may walk in, have an idea, bring some guys in, create a band, and play the music for the artist. Now, this is all well and good, but technology is changing drastically. And what happens in 1980 is that Roger Linn creates the LM1, his first drum machine with real drum samples. But he's not the only one. Itoro Takahashi from Roland creates one of the classic drum machines ever used and still popular today, the Roland TR-808. Now, the differences between Roger Linn's LM1 for Linn Electronics and Itoro Takahashi's TR-808 for Roland is that they're two different sounds. The LM1 has actual drum samples, and it's the first time someone made a drum machine with real drum samples. Now, Itoro Takahashi's TR-808 from Roland didn't have any real drum sounds. It was more like an electronic sound with pooms and pings and pops that sounded different than any other drum machine did. And the reason why is that he couldn't find the real chips he wanted to get, but he found chips that were actually bad chips, that when he used them, they worked to give him that sound. So he brought all the bad chips back to his office, and they created the TR-808. And that's why it has that sound. And that's actually the reason why they stopped making the TR-808. Once they started making a manufacturing process that didn't create any bad chips, that was it. He couldn't make anymore. Now, the second difference between the two devices is that one costs a ridiculous amount of money. The LM1 cost $5,000 to get it. No one's going to spend $5,000 on a drum machine in 1980 except for recording studios and record companies and famous artists. Now, this is why you always hear the LM1 on Prince's songs like Purple Rain and When Doves Cry. And you also hear it in Michael Jackson's Beat It and Thriller. Those are classic examples of the LM1 drum machine. But the Roland TR-808 is cheaper, less than $2,000 to get one, and it becomes popular because of that reason. It starts to get bigger all over the country and around the world, not just in the US, but also in Europe for pop bands. They don't have a drummer, they can pull that gear up and start working instantly and create songs.
1, 2, When Sucker MCs came out, it was just a new sound, period. Like, most things were instrumentation. You know, all the Sugar Hill records were bands. And even the Grandmaster Flash and Furious 5 records, all that stuff was bands. But when it came down to, you know, Run DMC and Jam Master Jay, like, it was just a drum machine. To just hear that, even that drum roll, boom, ta 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 ta.
Now that is pretty fat because now it's getting to the point where there's competition and that means we get better choices. But something else happens in 1981. Dave Smith invents MIDI. No, by this time, the media, record labels, only saw this music as black ghetto nigga music. It wasn't really any music to them. It was a fad, they thought. But they didn't realize what was going on in the background. It wasn't just black kids buying those records. There were white kids buying the records. There were white rap groups they never heard of before. They know nothing about that side of the world. They were still stuck in their own cultural ideas that didn't work anymore. And what happens next? The doors open. There's this white kid from Long Island who goes to NYU University. He wants to get into hip hop. He loves it. He's making beats. He's got his own group. And he wants to hang out and do his thing. He meets Jazzy J.
Danceteria was one of those clubs that had a crazy atmosphere because it was multiracial. You had blacks, Hispanics, whites. And I was the weekly DJ on a Thursday. And every week, this big white dude just comes stand in front of the booth. I mean, every week he'd stand there in front of the booth from the time I get there until the end. And then one day he came up and introduced himself. He said that, you know, he wanted to break into the music business, that he wanted to produce. He had a song that he wanted to do. So he invited me and Tila Rock to help him do it. Me and Rick kind of programmed the beat, got it tight. I did all of the orchestration, putting everything together, and
commentating.
Now this is a club in New York City back in those days called Danceteria. Blacks, whites, Latinos, everyone hung out there. It was a great place to hang out, talk, trade ideas, and listen to hip-hop music. Even after making that track with his TR-808 with Jazzy J and Tila Rock, he had more ideas and learned a lot from those sessions. He kept making more and more beats, but he wanted to do one more thing. He wanted to meet Russell Simmons.
Russell came in the Danceteria begging to get his records played like he usually do back in those days. And Rick was like, "That's Russell Simmons." Like, yeah. Think you could issue? Hey, yo, Russell. It's my boy Rick. Yo, Rick, Russell Simmons.
Russell can't believe that Rick is white.
And this is changing. He realizes that white kids love music too, and they love hip-hop.
They sat at the bar, they talked. By the end of the night, they were friends. They invited Russell down to the studio.
Rick had a drum machine full of hits. Drum machines were fairly new. Nobody had a drum machine full of hits. He did.
The drum machine changed everything. You didn't need a drummer. You didn't need a bass player. You need to have ideas and a way to formulate these ideas and record them by knowing how your drum machine worked fully. Without any problems, you could do anything with a great drum machine. Now, with MIDI becoming a mainstay and brand new inside the business, it started to help people do more than just use a drum machine. They can take a drum machine and sync a keyboard up, get a keyboard player in, or create their own parts. They can sync up anything they want in the studio, at home, or in a major studio. It opened the doors up, and those doors would never close again. In our next chapter, we'll talk more about not just the labels, but the use of all the machines and how many labels were created because there were so many different forms of hip hop, even house music or club music, whether it was club or dance, or even trance music. What happens here is that hip hop opened up an entire range of different sounds and different styles by being different and creating their own different sound, where even hip hop became club at one point. Now, don't forget to subscribe to us here on YouTube. That's right, subscribe right there in the bottom. And you'll learn more about other gear, pieces of gear, and you'll know when the next chapter comes up for our series on the 50 years of hip hop and the music production that prevailed.